which carries their military aircraft and what have you, was circulating around Venezuelan waters. They had surrounded the country for quite some time, and so it was building. But we woke up to news that there had been a swift operation undertaken by the U.S. authorities or the U.S. military, with President Trump fully aware of it, and they had captured the Venezuelan president and taken him to the U.S. and was a prisoner, if we can call it that. And there's been a myriad of reactions, particularly based on the reasons Donald Trump provided, because he spoke as well on the aftermath of the arrest and what they were seeking to do in Venezuela and why they went there to start off with. I want us to take a listen briefly to Donald Trump, not in because it's 21 plus minutes, just briefly, and then the rest of the guys are here will pick thoughts, because it bodes for interesting development on the international scene. But Crosby is here as well as Sixus. Perhaps I'll do quick thoughts first, and then I'll go on to us having to hear from Mr. Trump just briefly. Sixus is in a very Pan-African look. And so I suspect
I'm a Pan-Africanist, actually.
No, I'm not saying you're not. I'm just saying the look today carries that extra.
Yeah.
And so perhaps it will be the starting point for us in carrying forward what Garnett's message has been. But let me let you in on it.
Until news editors decided to throw me into all sorts of, like the thing that they do to us. You go into the office and they say, go and do this demo. The next day, go and do this demolition. Go and cover this. I used to be a true Pan-Africanist journalist. But Maureen, I want to correct you on something.
See, I used to be.
I used to, and it used to reflect, in my storytelling, in my dressing and everything.
Say that you were a Pan-African journalist, you were not making money, so you stopped to do other forms of journalism to get money.
Are there other forms of journalism?
But we don't have control as journalists. We don't have control over ourselves.
Where Mauna is sitting, there's money there.
Well,
yeah,
I can only agree with you on that one.
See his jackets behind there.
Yeah, it is well. But Marina, when you say with President Trump in the known, you underestimate the gravity of the situation. You should say with President Trump authorizing it. You see, that's the same arrangement with all countries. An operation of such a magnitude cannot happen without presidential authorization. So this was not something that Trump just knew about. He authorized it. And it's a shame. They blasted Nigeria. We praised them. We said, because the Nigerian army was not able, or government was not able to deal with the attacks on its citizens. So we applauded. Largely, we said, well done, Trump, for bombing Nigerian militant groups. We clapped. That applause was yet to die down when they entered into Venezuela. Now look at Venezuela. It's very rich in mineral deposits. In fact, I understand it has the highest or the biggest oil deposits.
1/5 of all of the world's crude.
Exactly.
Is in
Venezuela.
In fact, they have very heavy crude, and 1/5 of it. So if you divide the world into five. In terms
Venezuela
of all of the
controls the oil resources.
Yeah.
1 out of those 5 portions. And so that decision was not just a decision in the name of an intervention, and that word is so insulting.
Not to cut you, I mean, you'd continue, but see, there are, for theories that people use to analyze these things, there's the justification theory, as in what the on the face, on the face of the paper, what the motivation will be. For you to convince yourself to carry out something like this, or to try to convince others, you need to get a reason. What Donald Trump did was to label the Venezuela president, was to put a tag on him that he was doing A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. He was leading a drug cartel, all of those things, so that it will give some justification to go and attack.
Exactly.
But under it is the critical theory, the reality behind what he's going to do. So the attack or the labeling is just a face, but the real reason oftentimes is exploitation.
In simple English grammar, we say you give a dog a bad name and hang it. Look, it does not matter what is happening in a country, any particular country. It is not in the place of another sovereign country to jump into the affairs of that other sovereign country and say that we are removing your president for you because your president is no good for you. Really? It's the same thing that happened in Libya. And Libya has never been the same since the killing of Gaddafi. Libya has never been the same. We heard the story of was it Iraq or Afghanistan? Iraq, the weapons of mass destruction, Bush 1, no, Bush 2, one of them.
Bush 2. It was Bush 2.
Yes, till date, there's still not been any pointer to any weapons of mass destruction that were being produced
because
in Iraq.
There was no any.
Till date, as we speak today. How do you enter into a country? Abducts the president too. The president of the country. You kidnap the president of the country, take him to an undisclosed location. I mean, how? So this is the time for all those who believe in diplomacy. This is the time for you to start talking. All of this power play comes down to resource control, comes down to power play, comes down to strengthening of the dollar.
I'll have us hear the explanation, because the bit about the oil and some of the things he says is reason why there's serious concern in other places if a country can decide to get up and then step in whatever capacity.
Look, we know that if Ghana, for instance, is misbehaving, what would happen would be for countries like the US, UK, China to say, we are cutting aid to your country, or we are stopping trading
and
with
Venezuela
you.
has been under heavy sanctions from the US.
From the US.
So the reality is that before such a thing will happen, the proper war would have been fought economically already. When the economy then is destroyed, then this becomes the last thing to spoil it completely. In the case of Venezuela, if you look at where it is situated, there's the desire for US, and then we'll get a lot from the international relations aspect. There's a desire for US to maintain its role in the world, in geopolitics. We also know the reality about how Venezuela, is attracted to other big names, China, Russia, Brazil, if you like, to a certain extent. If these countries keep enjoying what Venezuela gives them, and then Venezuela enjoys the protection that they also give it, to a certain extent, in the coming years, they would keep increasing in their role in the world. So if you cut the source of these countries, your competitors, if you cut the source of China, which to a certain extent is Venezuela, the Caribbean, and those areas, then you are using Venezuela to fight China. That's the reality.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's a war that is directed at certain big names, certain global global elements, China, for instance, Russia, for instance. But you cannot go there and then blatantly start a war like you have done, bombard them like you have done in Venezuela. So let me go to your ally, which is Venezuela, and then do that to...
And the fact of the matter is that every ally is strategic and is useful to the, should I say the main? No country makes allies for no reason. There's a reason every particular country is an ally to another country, because probably you share some trade routes.
Yes.
And unfortunately for us, the African countries, also because we become dumping grounds for a lot of the other countries. Oh, we can go and dump our cars there, we can dump our rice there, we can dump our oil there, we can force our currency on them. So the dollar becomes a very powerful and strong currency, strengthening the US economy, weakening the rest of the world. Venezuela has oil. If we control the oil, then we control dictates and demands of the world market and all of that.
How we should sell it and all of that.
That also affects military operations. As for the economic war, it's on a daily basis.
Yeah.
As for the economic war, we don't even talk about it again, because it's a constantly fought war. So if the world remains quiet on this matter, and I think I've seen something from our Foreign Affairs Ministry, which I applauded.
Yeah, I mean, it's received a lot of applause.
If we remain quiet on this matter, especially as Africans, tomorrow the same Donald Trump will start bombarding other countries.
I mean,
and what do you do?
You started with Nigeria with the pretext that he's protecting Christians.
That is why I said I started by saying that they came for Nigeria. We applauded. They've come for Venezuela. You sit and be doing NDC MPP with it.
You see,
tomorrow they will attack. Which part of Ghana will they bomb?
The reality too is that Venezuelans have not been very happy
with their president.
It doesn't matter.
Exactly. That I'm not saying.
No, I think I get Crosby's points.
Yes.
But if you allow him finish, then he'll do this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
for a minute he became the enemy.
That's the truth. That they are not happy. We are talking about
know who engineered that.
I mean, all the economic concerns will come from the West.
Thank you.
That's the reality of the entire thing. So, if, like you're saying, if the world does not speak up against this, and then the West, through its mechanisms, its means, destroys another economy, they would use it as justification to invade again.
They told us, Crosby, that Nkrumah was not good enough for us. Didn't they tell us that? They told us that Nkrumah was a dictator. And they used our own people to do that. So, I mean, Venezuela is far from you.
I mean,
you listening, that's fine. Even myself, it is far from me. But look at your own political and economic history, and you will understand the thing that keeps recurring. And when they release a statement, you say it is NDC MPP, then you are on social media making noise. Kwame Nkrumah, the same thing happened. They told us that he was a dictator. They told us that he wanted to create he wanted to be president for life. In fact,
president of Africa.
It went beyond when he started the Unification of Africa project. They said, oh, he wanted to be president for Africa. A lot of this propaganda we heard, and that is how it starts. So they will start by making you, the people, angry and displeased with your elected leadership.
They will orient you. They'll change your mind.
And there are always people within your inner circles who will collect money and be used to deal with or cause the chaos. We saw it right in this country. So let's not even go far. So if Venezuelans are not happy with their president, Venezuelans have the opportunity to remove their president. They told us Gaddafi was an evil man. He was using oil resources for what? Also weapons. They leveled the same weapons charge against him. And they removed him. Today, Libyans are complaining the things they were receiving under Gaddafi, they are not getting. Libya is not the same anymore. So we can't let's not do NDC MPP with everything that happens in our lives. It is not helping us. God forbid.
Beyond
tomorrow when they bomb Accra, we will have this conversation.
It will not happen. Beyond the statement,
I'm not sure we're praying for that.
Beyond the condemnation of world leaders of the US, what more can they do?
If you had a strong regional and sub-regional blocks, you could do a lot. But right now, as it stands,
in the end, in truth, that question Crosby asks is very important.
Yes.
Military might.
It is the United States of America.
That's what I'm
Military
saying.
might is what comes
That's
in.
exactly the point I'm making. If you had a strong regional body, if you had a strong ECOWAS, if you had a strong AU, you think nothing could have happened?
I really think
you could have stood with Venezuela.
I really think nothing can happen because in terms of military capability, nobody compares to the US. Not even close. Not China, not Russia, not
Russia would disagree with you, actually.
They are not even close.
Russia would
talking
disagree
about the
with you.
US. In terms of economy, maybe China could match the US in a certain
China
way.
is surpassed the US economy. That's
You cannot only fight it with economy. When you're dealing with the element of soft power, nobody is coming close to the United States. See the bases they have in all over the world. How many of such bases does China have? How many of such bases does Russia have? When you're talking about allies, how many allies, true allies, does China have, does Russia have? It still remains the US. So until the world gets to a point where there is a real competition for the US will keep acting like this, especially if they have a leader like Donald Trump, who people describe as a non-rational actor. The US was the US when Biden was there. The US was the US when Obama was there. All these leaders have still been there when the US does its thing. But to a certain extent, they were a little bit measured. So at the moment, it will be a lot of, I don't know, maybe prayer.
What should I do about nothing?
Because it is the US.
You see, you underestimate the power of affirmation in constitutional law, actually. There's something to do with the approval or legitimacy of a coup. When there's a coup, the reaction of the people would either legitimize the coup and give authority to the coup maker or not. So again, I come back home, all the coups that we have had, the moment there's an announcement of a coup, you find people on the street
jubilating. In fact, in Venezuela right now, if you check through social media, Venezuelans are happy. Some are saying they've been liberated because they've suffered for 20 years.
Exactly
and all
is
of
the
that.
problem.
Yeah.
You think that is if Venezuelans had come together outrightly in a united voice, condemned this coup,
that would have made a lot of
so it's not always about military might.
When they divide you, that's all.
When they divide you, you are finished. Because the moment you started off with Mawina, you started off with the entry into the territorial waters of Venezuela by military carriers. That was the beginning. That you cannot, like we are here, then all of a sudden we have US or China or Russian carriers on our waters, then we are quiet because we are powerless. By the time the strike comes, it's too late for you. There's a reason under international law you cannot enter into the territory of another country with your military presence without the express permission of that country.
It started with
even if you are just passing through. Maybe you are in Accra here, you are docked here in Accra somewhere around the Jamestown area because you are going to attack, let's say, Togo, or you want to go from here, you are using here as a base to attack another country. Ghana would have to consent to that.
It's the sovereignty conversation and the Westphalian Treaty, where non-interference. Every state has its own authority over its own people. Don't come if I've not come.
Absolutely. So all of this, we'll get into the phone lines pretty shortly, but perhaps I'll have us listen to Trump just quickly on the justifications, and then we'll return a bit more, and then we pick some thoughts.
And we appreciate you being here. Late last night and early today, at my direction, the United States Armed Forces conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital of Venezuela. Overwhelming American military power, air, land, and sea, was used to launch a spectacular assault. And it was an assault like people have not seen since World War II. It was a force against a heavily fortified military fortress in the heart of Caracas to bring outlaw dictator Nicolas Maduro to justice. This was one of the most stunning, effective, and powerful displays of American military might and competence in American history. And if you think about it, we've done some other good ones, like the attack on Soleimani, the attack on al-Baghdadi, and the obliteration and decimation of the Iran nuclear sites just recently in an operation known as Midnight Hammer. All perfectly executed and done. No nation in the world could achieve what America achieved yesterday, or frankly in just a short period of time. All Venezuelan military capacities were rendered powerless as the men and women of our military, working with U.S. law enforcement, successfully captured Maduro in the dead of night. It was dark. The lights of Caracas were largely turned off due to a certain expertise that we have. It was dark and it was deadly. But captured along with his wife, Celia Flores, both of whom now face American justice.
That's U.S. President Donald Trump. Let me get onto the phone lines. I have two distinguished professors on the line with me. Professor Bafwa Jimendua is a former UN Senior Governance Advisor, and so is Professor Daniel Dramani Kipo Sunyezi. He's an Associate Professor at the Legon Center for International Affairs and Diplomacy, LESIAD. Profs, good morning to you, and a Happy New Year to the both of you as well.
Good morning, and Happy New Year to you and your staff also, and my good friend who's on the other side of the line.
Prof. Dramani, I want to start off with you, since you're the international relations expert here, and then I'll come to Professor Bafwa Jimendua with his expertise as well from the UN on what it is that we're seeing play out. But Prof. Dramani, with what we've seen, a lot of questions have come up. The blurring of international laws and treaties and what have you. What are we seeing really play out in the open in big 2026? Some say this is colonization all over again, and the world is standing aloof and watching.
Yeah. Thank you. Good morning to dear listeners. It's certainly a big problem that a country in this era will just move to another country to enforce their own domestic laws, and certainly that runs counter to international law. Ideally, we expect that an intervention to become lawful. It should be something that is sanctioned by the UN Security Council. When the Security Council authorizes, then they become lawful, and that conform with international law. Unfortunately, this is not something that is sanctioned by UN Security Council. It is an American's own law enforcement agents who just moved into Venezuela and acted. So certainly, I think it's like, I don't know how to put it. I think it's a show of power. Possibly that's the way I look at it. And as you said, if it's even about colonialism, it's a show of power. It's quite not the best. There could have been other ways to deal with it rather than this particular approach. So it's not the best for the country, and unfortunately, as you rightly said it, the whole world is watching. And I see we are not seeing. It's only that countries are condemning, but it has been carried out. Now, one of the most threatening aspects is that he has said, President Trump, that America will continue to have control over the country until transition can obtain. And that clearly would depict an issue of colonialism because of trying to take control of the country. And that will be like coming to colonize the country, and that certainly is worrisome.
In terms of the show of power you speak to, show of power between who and who? Because really, if Venezuela is expected to be an independent state, then who is the U.S. trying to show power to? And you mentioned that it is almost becoming colonialism all over again with what we're seeing.
The show of power that I said is that it is America, which is a state. Venezuela is also a sovereign state, but their sovereignty has been taken off. They haven't been able to show that kind of thing. And I believe that Venezuela armed forces certainly could have fight back, but possibly looking at the world superpower, America, the mind. Possibly they just decided to allow that to go on because they're supposed to fight, but will Venezuela be able to fight America in that mind? That is the question, because they have to defend their territory, but we didn't see that because of how powerful America is. So they might have also looked at it. They were supposed to see fire for fire, but I think that they also decided to only take a backstage or kind of thing. And I think that it is just because of the mind. If you look at the number of weapons that have been moved to the border, the airspace has been captured, and then air, water. Venezuela certainly cannot face America in terms of mind. So possibly that might be why they just decided to take a backstage and watch. Because I don't think Venezuela armed forces have what it takes to be able to meet America fire for fire.
Let me bring in Professor Ajimandia, because there's the UN aspect of all of this as to what security protocols most likely should have been triggered, particularly when we saw the initial entering of Venezuelan airspace and what have you. This has been coming, and a lot of individuals have been expecting this for some time. The UN, which was a body put together after the Second World War, was expected to ensure that peace and tranquility prevails and nations live cordially amongst each other. Again, many say this is yet another test case where the UN is failing. You have a bit more of understanding. What should have happened in terms of the UN and its mediation efforts to have not seen us be where we are currently?
Thank you once again, and thanks for having me. Anyone who has been observing global politics over the past years will understand that there is a major shift in global politics and global use of power. The United Nations, from after the Second World War, as you rightly said, develop a new system for international relations, a system that was built on respect for international law. Several laws came into being and conventions after the war for the sake of maintaining world peace, stability, and progress, development generally. But what we have seen lately, and by the way, don't forget, what happened to Venezuela is not new. It is in the character of Americans to go down south of their country as if they are the policemen of that area and police them. You may know of the Monroe Doctrine of the 1940s, initiated by American President Monroe himself. And you know that since then, Latin America has been under the grip of the American. But over the past few decades, there seems to have been some understanding of how America relates to this part of the world. But unfortunately, the current administration sees things differently. The current administration in America doesn't see the value of the United Nations. The administration doesn't recognize international law the way we know it. The current administration simply believes that with power it can achieve its goals. So the whole conflict between what in school you will learn as the realists and the idealists, clearly the realists seem to be winning in this kind of game. So I think as we all read around this, it's clear that under the current American administration, there's no regard for international law. And specifically your question about the UN watching and all. Look, the American government started over the past several weeks giving strong signals about the intention to overrun Venezuela. It started by first sending bombers to take out ships allegedly carrying cocaine to the United States. It done that over the past several weeks. Nobody seems to have complained. Now he threatened that, in fact, it might put boots on the ground, that is to send soldiers. And it has come to pass. And on top of all that, they have brazenly entered the country and kidnapped the president of Venezuela. And what reactions are we getting? United Nations, I don't know if they issue a statement. If they have, is the usual diplomatic that they will issue. European countries who were big part of the invention of the new international security order after the Second World War, they are almost mute. Some are just pleading for for stability, for understanding, blah, blah, the usual political talk. And nobody. The fact is that Donald Trump has cowered the whole world because clearly he is determined to use brute force to achieve the aims. And what is the aim? To make America great again, is to recapture the economy of the global village to be in the hands of the Americans. There have been stories going around. We know the origins of this. Venezuela possesses the largest reserves of oil. Venezuela has taken a different path towards its development, away from Western-dominated capitalist development to more or less the East, now more with China. And Venezuela is not willing to sell its oil denominated by the dollar currency. You know the story also of 1974 when the Americans made a deal with the Saudi Arabians to make oil base, itself be based on dollar, what we call the dollar petrodollars. Now that is shifting. And to make things worse, China has also taken keen interest and it become the largest buyer of Venezuelan oil, which means that China may be taking some, stepping into the so-called zone of the Americans, their backyard. All these are part of the reason why this invasion and kidnapping of the Venezuelan president are taking place. So, my friend, what we are facing right now, we are facing a very dangerous world. There's so much uncertainty in the global environment. Now it's being established again that power is might. In other words, if you are powerful, you can go anywhere in the world, bully people, and have your way. And nobody can challenge you. Unfortunately, this is what we are witnessing today.
And all we've seen, and like you said, I haven't seen a statement as well from the UN, other than some of the condemnations which we here in Ghana have condemned as well. There's a general risk that the global South runs with the prevailing conditions in Venezuela staying as it is. If things remain the same, the big question on everybody's lips, how does this not repeat itself anywhere else? Because we've seen the U.S. undertake similar such operations in Nigeria under the guise of dealing with terror groups. We are at a risk as third world countries, are we not?
Sure, we are facing serious risks in the global environment. In fact, back in, I think, in the 70s or early 80s, Americans did the same to Nicaragua. Their president, Noriega, they went in there, invaded the country, took him out and brought him to the States to be tried. It's not doing. But what is disturbing this time around is that the American administration is making so many threats. First, it wanted to incorporate Canada. In other words, to absorb Canada to be another state of the country. Of course, they got repulsed. Now, they said they want to acquire Greenland because of its strategic position. Of course, there were some mild protests by Denmark, which is currently more or less overseeing that territory. But lately I hear that the American government has sent some appointed the governor of Texas to lead a team as whatever to Greenland, which means it's seriously under consideration. Beyond that, in fact, in the present crisis, the American government has threatened other countries, especially Colombia, to watch its back, which in American parlance means, look, we are coming after you if you don't behave yourself. And even they are telling the acting president of Venezuela, the lady, that if she doesn't straighten up and do what is right, I'm quoting, then of course they will also come after her. It is threats. And what is worrisome is that the whole world is just looking on. Of course, there are issued statement. Russia has issued a statement. China has. But no action, no serious action to indicate that such actions can no longer be tolerated. So as you rightly said, and of course, right off the Europeans are wimps. They have not, the statement from the German government, the statement from the British, they are all mild. When such serious aberrations in international relations are occurring. So yes, we face a future of uncertainty, and I think the next couple of years under the current American administration is going to be difficult for the rest of the world. Now, I don't know what the so-called powerful countries in the world, what they can do to stem this possibility of grabbing in it in that way enhanced. Yeah. In fact, we've gone back to the jungle. The way international relations are being conducted now is a law of the jungle. If you are powerful, use your power. I don't want to refer to Russia doing the same in Ukraine, but similar. Look, what Israel has done in the Gaza Strip is the same power. Use power to destroy your enemy and take what you want. And still, the United Nations is weak only because America has deliberately weakened the United Nations. Over the past year or so, subventions, or what you may call subscriptions to the United Nations, have been reduced by almost 40%. Okay? And more importantly, don't forget that the UN is structured in such a way that the Security Council of the 5 veto countries, including the US, they control, and America holds that veto power. And as I was taught in school, the United Nations can only be as strong as its members want it to be. At the moment, its key members do not want to see the United Nations a strong organization.
Which portends a problem, like you've been saying, and leaves us nowhere. Let me bring in Professor Dramani again, and perhaps in trying to round up the conversation. This is international relations as we've been having the conversation, but this will begin to portend serious problems economically as well, the world over, in terms of how things have gone and how things will be like if the status quo continues and it continues in this regard in other aspects.
That is something that countries in the global south certainly should be worried. It is a new international order that is coming, which is not good for us, where the powerful can go into another area and grab whatever they want. And that certainly is not the best. And let's even assume that once this is not properly managed and Venezuela oil supply stop, that can create the global crisis in terms of oil prices. So these are all things that we are worried. The vice president, anything can happen to her. And even the minister in charge of oil, all these things are. And once there's a breakdown of the oil sector, everybody will be affected. And Venezuela is a very big country as far as the oil is concerned. What America is doing here, other superpowers, other powerful countries, China may also be emboldened. And you can already see what is going on in the South China Sea. China also trying to, how China is handling Philippines. China is equally trying to take over Taiwan, which China always thinks that Taiwan is just an extension of China. And that is, they are busy. All these things are telling you that we wouldn't be surprised that China will take full control over that Taiwan. So that is where we are going. Instead of building on multilateralism, where the UN system will be where states are recognized and states get their independence, that is taken away. While the powerful can get up and grab the country, take control, change the borders, and that is worrying. China is doing that or preparing to do so. Russia, Ukraine, you have seen it. It's taking over the Donbass, Luhansk, Crimea, and all these areas by force. And that is the norm. So gradually, that is where we are going. And that is the danger. When we no longer respect our multilateral institution like UN, which is supposed to bring global peace, and unilateral action takes the order, then we are getting a new world order. And that certainly is a great danger. And the danger is more to the countries in the global south because they don't have the power much. And I think that we should be able to get out of this and begin to move away from this unilateral actions of America and other bigger powers to show some amount of respect for the smaller states so that we can have these big state, small state politics. Respect them. They are all independent states. They all have a say. Respect their sovereignty, respect their territory, and that is what will bring global peace. But disregard, put the whole world on threat. And maybe on another point of geopolitical analysis, America wants to maintain full control over the Western Hemisphere, the countries in the Latin America, so that China, which is becoming a force, will stay off. That is what America and the Trump is going through. We will have control, and that is an imperial
tactics, and that is the way to deter China. Keep yourself to your area, and we also maintain our territory, and that is quite dangerous. And if these things are not well managed, we wouldn't be surprised. We see America fire for fire with China, and that certainly will disturb global peace.
Right. Prof, I thank you. I'll just give the last word as well to Professor Baffour Djimandua. And I'm just reading from somewhere that, look, in all of the conversations we're having, West Africa, particularly Francophone West Africa, could see France possibly emboldened to want to take such similar actions in abducting leaders from here, because we know the wave which has been blowing for some time within the West African sub-region, and the control and dominance of France beginning to wane, and the citizenry rising, and all of you. That is a real risk as well if we begin to look at it closely.
Well, the whole thing is that the global architecture is being unlocked. It's being undermined because countries, so-called global south, countries have become wiser. The Francophone countries in our sub-region, how France treated them at independence, literally granting them political independence, but enslaving, continuous enslavement, in terms of their economic advancement, requiring them to put their reserves in French bank, central bank, for them to determine how. Anyway, that's a long story. Now, countries like Burkina Faso, like Chad, like Niger, countries that we tend to look down upon because they've been impoverished by French colonization for decades, now they begin to assert themselves, and people are admiring them. So, first, besides the big power game that we just discussed, American imperialism and Russian too, and perhaps the new role that China may have to take, besides that, on our continent, these European countries are also at work, struggling to find ways to regain, if they can ever regain their stance, especially if these countries have cut off their currency attachment to France, and if they decide to pursue new foreign policies. So I think the threats are still here. I even suspect strongly, and there's some evidence to that, some of these instability in our neighboring countries like Burkina Faso and Mali and elsewhere could be instigated by some of these Western countries. And the stridency in the policy of Traoré in Burkina Faso can also tell you that all forces are at work to derail him. Even I heard, whether it's true or not, does not attempt to overthrow him last night or so. So we are facing a serious problem here. And I think Ghana, we cannot continue to just say that we are stable, democratic, and therefore we are fine. We are not, because we cannot live in an island surrounded by a boisterous sea. So it's important that we use ECOWAS effectively in finding a way to bring African countries, West African countries together. But ultimately, the best bet for Africa as a continent is to be serious with the continental unity idea that was mooted in the 1960s, led by Kwame Nkrumah. Because, look, if we continue to be divided like the way we are as poor weak countries and all, if you are not careful, another form of colonization, which is already underway, may occur, if not by the Europeans themselves, which of course is ongoing because of neo-colonialism. The new powers, China and others, can find a gentle way to still dominate us, especially if you're unable to take charge, take command of our economy. The whole world is revolving around economy, how countries can make the best out of what we have. And I think Africa will have to rethink how the role it has to play for itself, not to continuously rely on external powers to provide security, protection, and all. So, for me, we here in the sub-region, whilst we are working hard to get ECOWAS to be more effective, hopefully if we can bring back the 3 countries that absconded from the organization, and if the AU itself can find a new way of resisting encroachment by the European countries in particular and America in general, then the risk we face as we go into the future will be very, very serious.
Prof, I appreciate you speaking to us this morning.
You're welcome.
That's Professor Bafo Ajimandia. He's a former UN governance advisor. I also had Professor Dramani, associate professor at Lesiad with the University of Ghana as well, joining us this morning on very important conversations and the possible ramifications for us here in Ghana and the rest of the African continent, particularly in the face of what appears to be shifting global powers and architecture in terms of all that's been happening. Remember that famous speech of the president and one that got him quite the acclaim, where he was asking for reforms within the United Nations, amongst many other things. These are the times when those comments and calls become ever so important. But far away Venezuela, it could be closer to you than you think.
We'll cry for peace.